Hello, thank you for listening. My name is Robert Sterling, but everyone just called me Bob. I want to tell you a story from a time when I was just 29 years old, though I felt much older. Before the war, my world was a grid. It was the streets of Philadelphia. Everything had a place, a reason. I was a police officer, you see, a detective. My life was about patterns, motives, the predictable machinery of human desperation. A crime was a broken gear in the city's clockwork. My job was to find it, understand why it broke, and carefully, logically, remove it so the whole thing could tick along again. I believed in order. I believed any problem, any person, could be understood if you just looked at the evidence. If you read the file. The army looked at my file and saw something useful. They didn't hand me a rifle. They handed me intelligence reports, a printing press, and a microphone. My beat was now the Western Front. My suspects were the entire German Wehrmacht, and my method was the same. Find the loose threads, the weak points, the predictable motives, and pull. People think the weapons of my war were paper and sound waves. They weren't. My weapon was a man's own mind. And in the fall of 1944, deep in the German hell they called the Hurtgen Forest, I took aim at a man I'd never met. I never accounted for the day he would walk out of the trees and force me to look at my own reflection in his eyes. The Hurtgen wasn't a place. It was a condition, a green, wet darkness that swallowed light and sound and men. It smelled of damp earth, rotting pine needles and cordite. Nothing like the crisp, logical grid of my city. Out there, visibility was 10 yards. Trees exploded. Men vanished. It was pure chaos, the very thing my entire life was structured to fight against. My unit, the 1st Mobile Radio Broadcasting Company, was tasked with bringing some semblance of order to this madness. Not with bullets, but with words. Our target was a company from the 275th Infantry Division. Dug in, stubborn, a hard case, we'd say back in Philly. They were holding up the advance, costing American lives with every passing hour. My commander wanted them broken. My job was to figure out how. This was my element. I wasn't a soldier. I was an investigator. I started building my file. We interrogated the few prisoners we'd taken. They were hollow-eyed, trembling kids. Mostly, they talked about the cold, the lack of food, the officers who promised relief that never came. These were my first clues, the first cracks in their foundation. But the real break in the case came with a captured male runner. His satchel was full of letters. Letters from home, and letters going home. Reading another man's mail, it's a special kind of violation. It feels like breaking and entering into a man's soul. But to me then, it was just evidence. It was surveillance. I laid the letters out in my tent, the canvas smelling of mildew and wet wool. The dim lantern light made the German script dance. I wasn't reading them for sentiment. I was scanning them for weaknesses, for leverage. A wife complaining about the lack of firewood. A mother mentioning the Allied bombing of a nearby city. A father asking when his son would get leave. Each one was a potential tool, a pry bar to slip into the cracks of their morale. And then I found him, my subject. His name was Klaus. His letters were different. They weren't just complaints. They were vivid. He wrote to his girl, Anja, in a small town near Cologne. He didn't write about the fighting. He wrote about the silence between the shelling. He described the way the frost on the pine needles looked like sugar. He told her he missed the smell of her baking bread more than anything. He even included a clumsy, heartfelt little poem about her eyes. He was scared, yes, but he was also profoundly human. He was just a boy, trying to hold on to a piece of a world that wasn't trying to kill him. And I saw it all as ammunition. Every tender word, every private fear, every hope for a future with his Anja, it all went into my report. It all became part of the weapon I was building. My thoughts were no longer human. They were gears clicking into place. Klaus's homesickness for Cologne. That's our broadcast angle. Mention the recent bombing raids there. Remind them what they're missing, what might already be gone. The complaints about the cold and the officers. That's our leaflet. Print them in perfect German. Make it look like a news bulletin. Soldiers of the 275th. Your officers sleep in warm bunkers. You freeze in foxholes. Your letters have failed you. We even used Klaus's words. Is the memory of a warm meal worth dying for in this forest? We have hot food waiting for you. The poem about Anja's eyes, I held that one back. Even for me, that felt like a line. But it was close. We set up the broadcast truck. Its antenna a thin metal finger pointing at the dark woods. I wrote the script myself. The voice actor we had, a German defector, had the perfect tone. Not angry, not gloating, but weary. A friend offering a sad piece of advice. My voice, my logic coming from his mouth. Then the planes went over, the sky briefly humming with a sound other than artillery. Our paper bombs fluttered down through the canopy. Tiny, silent seeds of doubt planted directly into the enemy's mind. Then we waited. The silence that followed was heavier than any bombardment. It was the silence of 1,000 individual decisions being made. The silence of my logic working its way through their fear. I felt a cold, clean satisfaction. This was policing on a grand scale. No baccali brawl, no messy shootout. Just a neat intellectual victory. A successful arrest. It took 2 days. Then, a flicker of white in the tree line. A single soldier waving a dirty undershirt tied to a stick. Then another, and another. Soon a long, shuffling line of gray uniforms emerged from the forest, hands held high. Ragged, bearded, hollowed-out men. My campaign had worked beyond our wildest expectations. The entire company had folded. My commander clapped me on the back. Not a single American casualty. A clean win. I went down to the collection point. Part of me, the cop part, wanted to see the result of my work, to look them over to confirm my profile. I saw the commander, an older man with a face like cracked pavement, his arrogance gone, replaced by utter defeat. I saw the hard-faced NCOs, now just tired men. It was all as I had predicted. Then I saw him. He was just a kid, maybe 19. His face was caked with mud, a dark smudge of blood on his temple. He was shivering not just from the cold, but from shock. In his hand, he was clutching a small, wallet-sized photograph with the corners worn soft. It was a picture of a smiling girl. Anja. It was Klaus. My breath caught in my throat. The world tilted. The air, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and diesel fumes, suddenly felt thin. Impossible to breathe. The clean, professional satisfaction I felt evaporated, replaced by something hot and sharp, like swallowing glass. This wasn't a suspect. This wasn't a name in a file. This was the boy who wrote poems. The boy who missed the smell of baking bread. His eyes met mine for just a second. There was no hatred in them, no anger, just a vast, bottomless emptiness, a void, and in that void I saw what I had done. I hadn't just defeated him. I hadn't just convinced him to surrender. I had taken the most beautiful, fragile parts of his soul, his love for a girl, his memory of home, his quiet hopes, and I had twisted them into a knife. I had forced him to look at everything he cherished and see it as a source of pain, a reason to quit. I hadn't broken his will to fight. I had broken his spirit. The machinery of my logic had ground something soft and human into dust. And in that moment, the chaos I feared so much wasn't in the forest around me. It was right there behind that boy's eyes. A chaos I had created. Order, my God, my entire belief system, was a lie. I hadn't restored it. I had been an agent of a more insidious, more personal kind of disorder. I spent the rest of the war doing my job, but I never again felt that clean. Intellectual pride. I just felt the weight. After the war, I went back to being a cop in Philadelphia. I was good at it, but it was never the same. I could no longer look at a case file, a list of facts and motives, without seeing the ghost of the person behind it. The puzzle was gone, replaced by a profound and terrible empathy. The Hurtgen taught me that order is the most fragile thing in the world, and that sometimes the things we do to restore it are the most chaotic of all. They call what I did psychological warfare, a clean name for a dirty business. I learned there is no such thing as a non-lethal wound to a man's soul. You don't just disarm an enemy. You unmake a person. You take their reality and you shatter it. And when you do, a shard of it always gets stuck in you. This memory, it's a whisper on an old radio frequency. Faint, but it's always there. Help me make sure it's heard. Subscribe and ensure these stories are never lost to static.